Everybody. I'm so excited to join you here today. My name is Beth Pensabene, and I'm with Beachway Therapy Center. And I have James here with us, who has a really special story that he had the courage to share with all of you. And as you know from the first 7 days that we've been talking about Recovery Month, this is really a touching story that goes back to why Recovery Month is so important. James is a huge part of our Beachway community, and a huge part of our alumni community, but it didn't always start that way for him. He wasn't that person who was leading the way in recovery. He's been 11 months sober, and he has a story to tell you that will really inspire you. So thank you, James, for taking time out of your day to kind of share your story with everybody in our community.
I appreciate that, Beth. All right.
So I wanted you to just talk a little. I just was checking. We are live, and I wanted you just talk a little bit about your history. So, you and I touched a little bit on something that happened to you when you were 10 years old, which is really a hard time, right? When you're not a little kid, but you're not quite a man yet. It's kind of that pivotal age for a lot of young men.
Yeah.
Can you touch a little bit on your history?
Okay. So the main reason why I came to Beachway was to deal with trauma. And that leads into what happened when I was 10 years old. So two major events happened. The first major event happened. So I always wanted to play football growing up. And my parents signed me up. And there was a weight limit. And growing up, I was always kind of a pudgy, little overweight kid. But it really didn't matter. It wasn't that big of a deal to me. I never really thought about it. But the team that I played for had a weight limit, and they would weigh you prior to the game. It would be in a parking lot right before the game, and it would be in front of everybody. So I remember this vividly. I remember the entire experience vividly. I was waiting in line, and I was nervous because I knew I was probably going to weigh over what the weight limit was, which was 125 pounds. And I stepped on the scale. I weighed 137 pounds, and I was told I was not able to play. And I instantly felt that pit in your stomach feeling. And I ran away crying. And kids, teammates, opposing team, parents, adults started laughing. And I instantly went into shock from what I remember. And it was the first time in my life that I can remember that I felt like I wasn't good enough, that I was a failure, that I was a disappointment, that I felt abandoned. And then I was instantly put on diets, pretty severe diets. If anybody remembers Atkins, I was instantly put on that from what I remember. And that's where an eating disorder developed. That's where it was birthed. And I have dealt with that since then. So I was telling Beth earlier, that's when it was burned into my subconscious that if James is losing weight, if James is eating healthy, if he is making the right choices when it comes to that, then James is accepted, James is good. My identity formed around that. But if James is doing the opposite, James is bad. James is worthless. James is not good enough. And that has propelled a lot of decisions throughout my life, in my adult life, because I'm 31 years old now. And also at 10 years old, My parents went through a pretty vicious divorce. There's a lot of details around that I'm really not going to get into, but I was kind of hit with a 1-2 punch at 10 years old. My childhood pretty much ended right then and there from what I remember. I felt like I had to be an adult. I didn't feel like a kid anymore. And that's when the cycle of of irregular coping skills and poor decisions manifested.
And you and I talked a little bit about how it was a control thing for you,
100%.
and that also led you into struggling with alcohol, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
It was the similar type of soothing that you were looking for as related to this kind of inner struggle that you had. And since it was never really dealt with when you were 10, it kind of just grew and grew and grew. Is that correct?
That is correct. So, um, throughout my life, if anything has made me feel good, I kind of go all out with it. So, of course, when I first tried alcohol, I blacked out that night. Um, and the second time, same exact thing happened. And I've never been able to understand how people can just have a beer or two and that's it, take it away type of thing. That's all they're gonna have for the night. I wanna when I drink I wanna get hammered. Um, because I'm chasing the feeling rather than enjoying the alcohol. Um, I've been chasing the feeling with everything my entire life. Um, so with alcohol, I was doomed to fail from the start. It's it's drugs. Anytime that drugs have been a part of my life, uh, which it really hasn't been much, but when it has, it's we're doing it 100%. There's no 50% in that, or moderation or whatnot. It's hard for my brain to comprehend that. Um, I do the same thing with work. I do the same thing with women. I do the same thing with anything that gives me validation, anything that makes me feel good about myself, anything that comforts me, anything that helps get me out of my internal thoughts. Really, it's coping. I use things to usually cope with uncomfortable situations.
So that it can resonate with a lot of people out there listening. So thank you for having the courage to share all that. You mentioned to me that the trauma program, when you got to Beachway, really kind of uncovered and like peeled back all the layers.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily about food or alcohol or the job or women. It was about what was underneath. And you said that there were a couple things that really kind of was an awakening for you. And one of them was the letters that you wrote and you shared. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Of course. So, um, the core issue with a lot of my issues, from what I've been able to find out and through my experience in recovery, because Beachway isn't my first go around. This wasn't my first dipping my toes in the sand moment in recovery. I've been in recovery for years now. Um, and what brought me to Beachway is that I've dealt with a lot of surface issues for a long time. I'm very versed in recovery. I'm very versed in mental health and addiction. I can probably teach classes on it, um, but I had never dealt with the core stuff, and that's what brought me to Beachway. Is because they have this very respected trauma program, and I knew that I had to. I knew I had to look at that stuff for long term recovery. And I had never done that. I had never ever done that. I've been too afraid to do that. because that stuff really, I'm a vulnerable person, but that stuff really scares the hell out of me. Um, so some stuff that I uncovered or that I was ready to deal with that I did in trauma were some very deep resentments toward my parents. So, like I said in the beginning, when I was 10 years old, my parents went through a really bad divorce, really, really bad divorce. And their decisions affected my brother and I negatively. Um, and I have been resentful toward that for a very long time and afraid to look at it, afraid to confront it, not confront them, but confront the feelings surrounded by that. Um, and I've played victim toward them a lot, blaming a lot of my actions and decision making on what had happened to me. And at in the trauma program, it was the first time that I was really able to release it. And what I mean by release it, I was able to release it in a protective, in a safe environment that in front of a professional who's going to help process me through it. Because with a lot of us who struggle, we can release this stuff, but most of us don't have the tools on how to process through it to kind of land in a healthy way when going through that. And that was the case. So like one of the exercises that I did that was very impactful was I wrote letters to both of my parents. And not just letters like I'm upset that you did this. Like I mean like deep letters of how I really felt. Not just blaming like I've done or just like conceptualizing, oh, it's because you did this. This is why I act like this now. It's like, you know, that 10-year-old kid needed a hug, and you didn't provide that. And um and you should have. I still get emotional talking about it, but I was able to do it. And I was able to process it and really accept that they didn't do it intentionally. My parents loved me. I've never questioned that. And they did the best they could for what they had, truly. And that was really impactful. Like, I remember walking out of the yoga room. If you've been to Beachway, you know what I'm talking about. Like, a million pounds lifted off my shoulders when I did that, especially toward my father. Uh, and yeah.
Well, I know this community is giving you a big hug right now, including
Thank you.
me. We all need it every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that you said you're 31, right?
Yeah.
So 21 years later, you remember that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You did a hug that day. So how do you feel now? How do you feel now that you still would need, obviously emotional, of course, but how do you feel your life has changed?
It's a great question. That is a great question. It's been a whirlwind since getting out of Beachway because uh, it wasn't just like it wasn't just like because I'm from Western New York and Beachway's in West Palm Beach, Florida. It wasn't like I booked a flight, went to treatment for a little bit, and went back. Um, I changed everything. Uh, I I knew I knew that if I went to treatment, went back right away, that the likelihood of it sticking truly was slim to none. So I remember walking on that plane when the door closed, thinking, "Okay, buddy, no turning back now. You're not coming back for a while. It's time to grow up." Um, and I say that with complete and utter compassion toward myself, and grow up emotionally. And Beachway was a catalyst for that. So I'd be the first one. I'd be lying to you if I said it's been rainbows and unicorns since I got out on December 1st of this past year. Um, but with the tools that I was taught, and like Beth and I were talking prior to this, um, when, let's say, if I get triggered or if something comes up that does trigger me or makes me feel a certain type of way, um, the biggest thing that I learned is self compassion, and I show that to myself now, because I didn't think going into treatment that I was going to come out this brand new fixed toy, and that all these outside influences were going to just come bounce off me, and I was going to be just perfect. Um, but the difference now is that the length of time that I am hurting or feeling sad or in the victim triangle, something that you'll learn in treatment if you've never been in, very important, is minuscule compared to how it used to be. And that is, if you told James a year ago that that I would have those tools and I'd be using them and they actually work, thought you were psychotic. I absolutely think you were psychotic. Because I thought I was unfixable. I truly thought I was unfixable, that I was going to be like this for the rest of my life, and that it is what it is. It is what it is.
So you were talking about how you knew that you were going to be there for a while, and you haven't left Florida. You're still in Florida.
No, no. I live in Delray Beach, Florida now, and it's crazy. It's people weren't lying that it's hot down here in the summer. So
Yeah.
um,
The
I have not.
continuum of care at Beachway, you and I were chatting about how important that is. That it's
Yeah,
not, you just don't check in and check out. It's
correct.
something that, and that really ties back to Recovery Month, which is what we're highlighting in September. Um, and I loved when you told me that part of your continuum of care is that every day you text Dina, who's in charge of our family therapy, what you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Um, and you were so grateful today to give back to Beachway by sharing your story.
Hmm.
Um, I love that you are continuing that connection, post physically being there every day. But tell us also a little bit about what you're doing um, with the alumni program and how it's really helping your recovery.
Oh my gosh. So I pretty much the alumni program meets twice a week. They do a Tuesday night, just alumni. So it's only open to alumni via Zoom. I attend that pretty much every single Tuesday. I've missed a couple here and there since I've gotten out. It's very intimate, and it's very real. Like last night, we had, we had an incredible talk about anger, and how it influences us and how we've been able to deal with it. And like, it is very rare that I walk out of or that meeting ends and I don't feel a little bit better. That it's not like a refresher. Like it's not that that it hasn't provided some value to my day and to my life. Like it's truly like an intimate group where we actually truly care about each other. That's hard to find. Um, and then, and I've chaired that. So there's a person who leads the meeting, and um, if you do come to Beachway, you'll meet Helena, who is the alumni coordinator. She's incredible, and then she kind of runs all that. And then there's somebody who leads the meeting, who either finds somebody who speaks for it, brings up a topic. I did that for 2 months. I've spoken at that meeting a while back. And then Wednesday they also do an alumni meeting where it's alumni and then people who are inpatient or who are attending Beachway at the same time. And that's in person and via Zoom at the same time. So like if you're local, you can drive to Beachway and be there. And kind of the same thing. I chaired that for a month and I've spoken at that as well. And I do this because I don't do it out of fear about like if I don't do this, my life's gonna fall apart. I do it for a multitude of different reasons. One, I enjoy it. I'm fond of mental health. I'm like always very curious about it, and Beachway and Beachway's different. Like it really is. Like, like I feel like I have a good BS monitor, and I don't sense any BS when it comes to Beachway. Like they care. Like they really care. I never felt like I was just a number there. Like in and out, pay the money, you're gone. Like nobody feels like that when they go there. And I came in broken. I came in destroyed. Um, a blubbering mess, and so I feel like it's a part of my duty to help give back. You know, simple. Like that's how this process works. Is somebody helping the next person? If that doesn't happen, then recovery doesn't happen. It's got to be, you got to give back.
Well, what would you say to people who are listening? What would you say to them if they're listening to you and thinking that their loved one is struggling or maybe they're struggling? What should they do first?
Whew. So, my dad dealt with this a lot. He didn't know what to do with me. I remember before I came to Beachway, I had like one of my bottoms. I've had multiple bottoms, and I had a bottom, and he just looked at me. And my dad's a pretty intelligent person, and just like, what am I gonna do with this person, you know? And I remember thinking to myself, I don't even know what to do. So, if you have a loved one who's struggling right now, most likely your loved one really does not know what to do. They really don't know what to do. And there's a lot of different attitudes when it comes to trying to help somebody get recovery. Like some people are set in the method, like you got to show them heart, you got to show them tough love, kick them out of the house, let them go to jail and experience that type of route. And that works for some people, but most of the time, the person who is struggling, from my own experience, that person has to get to a point where they're ready to say, I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. I need to listen. So showing compassion toward that person, the person who is struggling, that is not all that they are. Okay? So if they suffer with alcoholism, if they suffer with depression, if they suffer with bipolar disorder, anxiety, so on and so forth, when it comes to substance abuse and mental health, that is not all they are. They didn't ask for it. Okay? They were inflicted with this. Because think about this. Like, let's say if your loved one had cancer, people would be showing up your house with flowers and how can we help? How can we help? The connotation around substance abuse and mental health is skewed because there is some accountability that can be taken place, but the person didn't ask for this. Okay. Most of the time, they just have to be ready for help, and it's up to you to make that decision if you're going to be if you're going to be ready and available when that happens.
Thank you for that. And anybody listening in, please comment here. Give James some love and for sharing his story. I know so many of you already know him from the alumni group. And I hope that you do listen to his words wisely. You know, if you need help, please ask for it. We're here to help. James, thanks so much for taking the time for sharing this with us. And have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Beth. Thank you for having me.